Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we look at what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. And my name is Rod Mackenzie, and today I want to talk about reports by the Western media agencies that the BRICS founding member India has made a decision to increase its oil supplies from the US to replace fellow BRICS member Russia's oil. However, industry analysts are confident that US oil will not be able to compete with Russian oil in the Indian market. So is there any truth in these reports? Now, India, one of the largest buyers of Russian oil, along with China, has doubled its purchases of American raw materials. Now, according to Platts data, average daily imports rose to 247,000 barrels in January to April, which is almost double the 124,000 barrels per day purchased during the same period last year. According to Reuters, India has been compelled to increase its imports from the US in light of a decline in its oil purchases from Russia. Now, it's alleged that India began to reject Russian oil in order to avoid falling under secondary US sanctions, which began at the beginning of the year, which included a new batch on Russia's shadow fleet vessels. Bloomberg also claims that India will put an end to Russian oil. It wrote in February that India brought its purchases of Russian oil to its lowest level since January 2023, which they say testifies to the effectiveness of American sanctions, which is aimed at disrupting Russia's oil supply chains. The Western agency also predicted in the next 2 months, India would further reduce its oil imports from Russia due to a sharp reduction in the available shadow fleet. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and my website, scobricsinsight.com, to further develop them. Now, you can do this by making a small donation, which you can do by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me, and I'm thanking you all now. And do keep the comments coming. Love to read them and love to respond to them. However, Russian analysts have expressed skepticism regarding the assertions that India is allegedly reducing Russian oil in favour of American oil. Western agencies have been producing these sensational stories for a number of years, according to Alexander Frolov, who's the Director General of the Institute of National Energy and an editor at the industry media Infotech. In addition, last March, they published an article on the record purchases of American oil by Indian refineries instead of Russian oil. Now, the reality of this situation is far from true. Indeed, India did begin purchasing oil in 2015, shortly after the US lifted its long-term ban on oil exports. However, despite 10 years of cooperation with Indian refineries, the American oil companies have not yet succeeded in achieving a significant share of the Indian market. The purchases have been consistently fluctuating. Furthermore, the current growth in export to 250,000 barrels per day to India is negligible when you look at it in the context of 10 years of cooperation, in which the peak volumes reached more than 600,000 barrels per day. Now, in 2022, Delhi experienced a slight supply interruption of Russian oil due to the EU's decision to cease its imports of Russian oil. Then, notably, of course, Russia became India's primary supplier within a short period of time. Russian oil quickly became the dominant crude oil in the Indian market, displacing other major suppliers, particularly those from the Middle East. Now, since then, Russia has consistently remained the leader in the Indian market, with Saudi Arabia and Iraq in second and third places. Now, despite the twofold growth reported by the Western media, the share of American oil has remained small and will continue to do so. The average daily import from India from the US to India is 247,000 barrels per day, while Russia supplies India with between 1 and 1.5 million barrels per day. I mean, collectively, Russia, Saudi Arabia and Iran supply the majority of the Indian market, according to Frolov. I mean, he stated that following the introduction of additional sanctions against the shadow tanker fleet transporting Russia, yes, there were logistical issues, but they turned out to be temporary. Plus, during the winter period, we observed how suppliers and carriers adapted to the new sanctions conditions. But at the start of spring, the large global agencies acknowledged that the sanctions hadn't actually significantly impacted the volume of Russian oil to sales markets. I mean, following a short period of decline, supplies now recovered and are approximately at the same level as last year, according to Frolov. According to the industry statistician Platts, seaborne oil exports from Russia to India reached 1.64 million barrels per day in April 2025. Now, despite the reported increase in oil supplies from the US to India, Russia's maintained its leading position in the Indian market. I mean, as I mentioned before, its main competitors are Saudi Arabia and Iraq, not the United States. I mean, you have to remember, American oil and Russian oil are not direct competitors in the Indian market, and this is due mainly to the differing qualities of the two products. I mean, Indian refineries are geared very much towards heavy and medium heavy grades of oil, which include the Russia's oil crude, while US exports are mainly light and ultralight shale and West Texas Intermediate sweet. Now, India primarily acquires medium-sulfur Russian oil crude, which is processed to yield a huge volume of various oil products, but mainly petrol and diesel from the large refineries. I mean, the majority of Indian oil products from the refineries are destined for foreign markets, and those are mainly the US and the EU. I mean, there's been a shift in the market towards Indian oil products made from Russian oil, simply because they turned down Russian oil direct and the diesel through the Druzhba pipeline, so now, of course, they're buying it from India. I mean, yes, India purchases ultralight, low-sulfur oil from the US, but this oil cannot be mixed with heavier grades of oil, including Russian oil, for processing at the refineries. So that means that irrespective of any political agreements between the US and India, there are not the economic and technical peculiarities that will make it worthwhile. I mean, it's not simply cost-effective for Indian refineries to import large volumes of American light crude, since this grade of oil is less efficient when blended with heavier grades of oil, which is what the Indians prefer. I mean, the primary benefit also of Russian oil, which has enabled it to secure the number one supplier position, is its competitive pricing. According to Sergei Tereshkin, who's founder and CEO of the Open Market Oil Products Marketplace, he stated that the volume of oil supplies from Russia to India is unlikely to decrease significantly, given that the Urals is traded at a significant discount to Brent. Now, it's also important to note that American oil companies do not offer discounts. They don't have the margins that they can do that. And the fluctuations in India's oil prices, which see a rise and fall in purchase from the United States, can be attributed just to seasonal variations. I mean, India is currently in the process of increasing its oil products production in anticipation of the start of the automobile driving season in the Northern Hemisphere in Europe, and particularly North America. And Delhi aims to meet the rising demand for oil products of petrol and diesel by increasing its production as a way to generating additional revenue. Consequently, in the spring, it traditionally increases its purchase of American oil, but in the fall, as a rule, it reduces purchase because in the winter months, motorists use less fuel than in the summer. So there you have it. India will continue to be a large buyer of Russian oil, and don't listen to the unreliable people at Bloomberg, Reuters, AP, etc., because they just do not tell you the truth. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and also set the alert button so you get informed when I post a new video, and click on the thanks button at the bottom of the screen if you want to make a donation. Thanks for watching, and see you all again soon. Thank you.